I'm Kate Stephanie Maranya, a student of Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English. And for today's vlog, we're going to talk about the teacher-centered and learner-centered approach to material adaptation. But before that, let us first define what material adaptation is. Material adaptation refers to the application of some strategies to make the textbook more effective and flexible. The process of changing or adjusting the various parts of a course book is closely related to the reality of dealing with learners in the dynamic environment of the classroom. This means that adaptation focuses more on learning than teaching. This means matching materials with the learner's needs, the teacher's demands, and the administration's purpose. Now, many examples of material produced for language teaching and learning purposes seem to follow a very similar format. They only differ in shape and visual impact, but are very often based on similar topics and activities, hence similar objective. First, we have the activities. The activities are mostly based on language manipulation, such as drills, comprehension tests, substitution tables, just like what teachers are doing right now. They are providing applications after every discussion in a virtual classroom, for example. Next, we have the topics. The topics are generally trivial and are very often not relevant to the learner's needs and interests. And lastly, we have the objectives, which are usually based on the main format of the presentation practice production approach. The presentation process production approach is a method for teaching structures such as grammar and vocabulary in a foreign language. It is divided into three phases, namely the presentation, the practice, and the production. This process is moving from tight teacher control toward a greater learner freedom. Now, most modern experts would agree that ideal classroom interaction involves a two-way process where both students and the teacher try to adapt to each other's goals and procedures. For instance, the teacher may first initiate the activity but should then observe the student's reaction. A number of potential limitations can be identified with these types of language teaching materials. First, we have they tend to undermine and demotivate learners. Second, they are rather trivial. Third, they are not new or innovative. Fourth, they tend to give a very stereotypical image of the target language. And lastly, they do not take into consideration the main users, more specifically, learners and teachers. Next, adapting materials. First, a teacher-centered approach to adaptation. Material adaptation in the great majority of cases is still left to the teacher's hands, and it is largely based simply on their intuition and experiences. That is a teacher-centered material adaptation. But when we say a learner-centered approach to adaptation, as defined by Clark in 1989, it provides a typical example of a learner-centered approach to adaptation. He acknowledges the importance of the learner's involvement in the adaptation process, and he distinguishes what he calls a negotiated syllabus from an externally imposed syllabus. The former is internally generated, and it is a result of the product of the negotiation between the teachers and students, while the latter is a syllabus imposed by an external body such as the teacher, the institution, and administrative authority. There are several lists of key features in the materials adaptation. To name one, learner-centered and critical awareness development. In the sense that their aims are the development of learners' critical awareness, linguistic empowerment, and therefore learner autonomy. The material should put learners at the center of the learning process and make them input providers, whereas teachers should be facilitators and coordinators and should provide a stimulus, a starting point for language exposure, as well as for different approaches to learning. Second, we have flexibility and choice. Material should be flexible in the sense that they should provide learners with the possibility of choosing different activities, tasks, projects, thus of adapting the materials to their own learning needs. Third, we have the open-endedness and aesthetic experience. If materials allow one possible answer, they do not leave space for interpretation and adaptation. Whereas if they are open-ended, they can become more relevant to the learners. In many ways, this is related to the concept of aesthetic experience, an idea which originated from the theory of aesthetic response as put forward by Rosenblatt in 1995. Aesthetic response refers to the process of reacting spontaneously when reading literary texts, hence, it involves the interaction between readers, language, and text. Next, we have the relevance. In an attempt to draw a link between the adaptation process and reading, material left open-ended, as explained above, have the potential to become relevant to the learners when they fill those gaps with their ideas, interpretations, and discussions. Fifth, we have the universality. Material should be based on universally appealing topics, which are culturally provoking in the sense that they are culturally specific, but at the same time, they are present in all cultures. A rich source of this type comes from literature, which typically involves themes based on life experiences, feelings, and relationships. Another important feature is the authentic and non-authentic input. Material should be based on authentic texts, those texts which have been written for any purpose other than language teaching. At the same time, there should be a combination of authentic and non-authentic texts based on realistic scenarios in order to expose the learners to realistic input. Next, we have provocative topics and tasks. Material should include topics and activities that can potentially provoke a reaction. Of course, we do not make materials just for nothing. We are here to provoke reaction from our students. We are here to provoke attention from our students. Hence, an aesthetic experience, whether it be positive or negative, that is personal and subjective. This can make the learning more engaging and perhaps more humanistic. To conclude, as teachers and methodologists become more aware of SLA research methods, can alter to take them into account and cover a wider range of learning. Much of the learning is concealed behind such global terms as communication, or such two-way oppositions as experimental or analytic to improve teaching. We need to appreciate learning in all its complexity. Such model, the adaptation process is considered in two levels, and these are: first, adapting materials with the purpose of making them effective and relevant to specific classroom, and second, adapting materials with the purpose of changing their objectives in order to reduce the distance between research and classroom prep. Okay, since we are done with the definition of terms and the discussion of the teacher-centered and learner-centered approaches to material adaptation, I will now share with you my experiences with an interview of a language teacher. Her name is Miss Princess Melodine Arlexine from Iloilo Doctors College. I have prepared 3 questions for her. First, what are the factors that you consider in choosing materials? Second, what instructional materials would you recommend in language teaching? And third, considering your experiences in teaching, what are the roles of instructional materials in language learning? For the first question, she answered, there are several factors that one should consider when choosing learning materials. Personally, she looks into the availability of these materials and makes sure whether these materials are durable so that it would last for more than just a single usage. Second, she considers the feasibility and how efficient it would be if you use them in the classroom. Third, she chose materials which does not only concerned with its physical condition, but also its effect to learners. Fourth, she also considered the learners when choosing the materials. And lastly, she has to think about their needs, make sure that the materials that she uses in the learning process are relevant to the experience of my learners. So, somewhat like her answers are centered upon the notion of the learner centered approach to material adaptation, wherein she focuses more on learning than teaching. She focuses more on the learner's needs, the administration's purpose, and the teacher's goals. Next, we have for the second question she answered. Since an effective language teaching involves a lot of first-hand experiences, the learner should be exposed to whatever is to be taught. As a language teacher, she would suggest that the learner should be exposed to the language on a first-hand basis, not just through the books and other written materials, but also literary events, language simulations, literary films, documentary films, and of course, motion pictures with the target language as a medium of communication. So for us Filipinos, our second language is English. And those foreign language that I am talking about are those that are alien to us. And to continue, she also reiterates that language teaching does not only aim to develop the learner's speaking skills, but also reading, writing, and listening. In her classroom, she experienced letting her learners do radio drama to enhance their speaking skills. She also let them customize journals so that every now and then she can take note of their improvement in writing and in reading. Since their school is in the city where students can go to the bookstore easily and have the privilege to buy a book or even a book series, she requires them to have a novel of their own and critique it at the end of the quarter. And she also keeps several voice records of herself reading short stories and poems and even conversations that usually happen every day, and let the students listen to it and transcribe those words that they have listened to. This is for their listening skills development. So basically her type of teaching is somewhat like, as what I've said earlier, a learner-centered, and it really aims to help the students reach its full potential. She does not just focus on a one-sided view of education, for example, in language learning, but she focuses more on the veracity of the idea of language. And for the third question, she answered that instructional materials is not only useful in language learning, but to teaching in general. Instructional materials really play a vital role. These are the ones that assist the teacher in the classroom. Of course, it assists the classroom because it is now the supported curriculum. The curriculum has to be implemented, and it needs the supported curriculum to make it work more flexibly and effectively. So, personally for her, instructional materials have helped her deliver the instruction with ease and effectiveness. These materials are also great influence in making her class more engaging. And I guess that would be all for this vlog. Thank you for watching, and may God bless us all. See ya!